Welcome to the Bexar Facts podcast. I don't know how much goodness we can pack into one podcast, but we definitely tried. Hello, I'm DeMonte Alexander. I am joined by my colleagues, Lisa Baratachea and Christian Archer. And today, okay, let me start over because I left a little thing there for you guys to say hello. If you don't, I'll just keep going.
We both did. Okay.
Sorry. Welcome to the Bexar Facts podcast. I don't know how much goodness we can pack into one podcast, but we definitely tried. Hello, I'm DeMonte Alexander, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Lisa Baratachea.
Hello.
And Christian Archer.
Hey, guys.
And today, you're in for a treat. If you have followed our social media platforms, reviewed our polls, caught us on the local news, or even tuned into this podcast, you may not know the names of the people behind the scenes, but they are fundamental in the lifeblood of our organization and help us every day to ensure that your voice is amplified and your voice is heard. Welcome Steve Spriester from KSAT 12, Iris Dimmick from the San Antonio Report, and Dave Metz from FM3 Research. Welcome everyone to the 17th episode of the Bexar Facts podcast.
Hey guys, thank you all for appearing on this. This will be fun.
Pleasure to be here.
I got my haircut just for this. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you post it on Instagram, Steve, like everything else?
I didn't. I'm sorry. I haven't yet. Yeah. I thought I'd save that big reveal just for this podcast.
Okay, nice.
I'm still rocking my pandemic hair. So
I was ready to go out. All right, well, guys, hey, we are a year and 6 months into this endeavor. Wow. From your perspective, how does it feel, Christian, to see this idea come to life?
Well, you know, it's so fun to kind of look at our Brady Bunch squares here and to recall the conversations that I had with everybody here about this, you know, kind of crazy idea of doing this. And, you know, it really brings a lot of joy to my heart to see this really kind of, you know, taking a life of its own and to see how many people are engaged with us from, you know, reading the essay report stories, watching Steve on KSAT 12 and Dave kind of thunder away on the numbers. It's awesome to watch. It's fun to get the feedback. You know, whenever we release a new poll, the amount of comments that I get on a daily basis are, you know, in the hundreds. And it's really great to see people really kind of tuning in and getting really good quality data from Dave and the polls that we're putting together. It's awesome to watch, and I think, you know, we have a lot to do. We have a lot to grow, and you know, with this team, it's kind of hard to miss. Lisa,
I would say I would echo the idea of it being fun. I think that it was either the best year to start a poll or the worst year to start a poll. I mean, from the global pandemic to the conversations about police reform, a very polarizing and presidential election, conversations about race and race disparities, working from home and virtual school and the epic winter storm. And it's just like the list goes on and on. Like for us to have launched a poll during this time was really incredible because most people were at home bunkered down. And this was the first time where there was a vehicle for us to reach out to the community to really hear from the community what was going on in their homes, because we weren't out in the community hearing our neighbors, our friends from school, or, you know, drop off pickup. So it was a really interesting time to launch this. And, you know, I know, you know, Christian and I have been talking about doing it for so long, and to see it really come to life and come to fruition has been really rewarding.
Absolutely. Iris, Steve, we've done 5 polls together. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I can believe it, actually. And I love what you said there about the fact that this is the best of times, the worst of times. I mean, there was a certain point where the pandemic came where like all plans went out the window. Okay, well, we're going to do the polls. We're going to start. But I'm just excited about what we've done so far, the quality of work we've done so far, getting to work with the great journalists, not only at KSAT, but also the San Antonio Report, like Iris, you know, that we did the Prop B, you know, discussion about the police union contract together. That was a Bexar Facts KSAT San Antonio Report production, and the numbers that Dave gives us and the credibility that Dave gives us is unparalleled. And so I'm really excited about all of those things that we've accomplished so far and where we're going. And, I just think we keep getting better and better. And I actually think the last poll that we did, among the best that we've done.
Spot on.
Keep improving on the formula. And, I think we're going to continue to grow and get better, but I'm very happy with where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, and echoing Lisa's point, the pandemic shut everybody down, including a lot of journalists. Like, I wasn't able to run into people in the halls of City Hall anymore. I wasn't able to really walk around and talk to people as much. And so having Bexar Facts as a resource was incredibly important to our reporting.
And Dave, I mean, we can't leave you out, buddy. Like, from your unique perspective as one of the best in the country, I know you do this around the country, conducting scientific surveys. What have you learned about the greater San Antonio area? What have you learned about our community?
Yeah. Well, let me just first say, DeMonte, in response to some of the questions you asked before, this project has really just been a joy for me as a pollster and someone who likes to understand what the public thinks, because most of the time we're working for a specific client. We're working for a candidate or a campaign that wants to win an election, or someone who has a specific issue that they want to focus on. But it's rare to have the opportunity to just be creative and thoughtful and sort of ask yourself, what are the issues the community may care about? And what's an interesting way to understand what's on people's minds? And with this project and this whole team, it's just been such an intellectually rewarding and challenging process to come up with these questions and without any agenda behind them, just try to understand what the public is thinking. And in terms of what we've learned about San Antonio, everything Lisa mentioned, this has just been an incredibly challenging year, obviously all over the country and all over the world, but particularly so in San Antonio, where not only has the community had to confront a global pandemic, an economic downturn, lots of discussions about race and policing and a contentious election, but also a devastating winter storm, all in the space of 12 months. And one of the things that's really remarkable, I think, is the resilience that you've seen the people in the greater San Antonio area show. Despite all of those challenges, the attitude of the community has remained relatively positive and optimistic throughout. And that's reflected by the fact that they just have reelected, local elected officials by wide margins, despite all the challenges that have been faced over the last year. At the same time, I think the poll shows that there are some persistent challenges that remain and that are unaddressed. And the one that's really stood out in almost all of our polling is homelessness. And the degree to which the public is concerned about that and is not fully satisfied with the way that local government has responded to it. I think that's going to be a persistent issue that will be interesting to hopefully to track in future polls where we aren't reacting to as many crises and have a chance to dig deeper on some of the more persistent issues facing the community.
What was funny about that, Dave, and it goes back to the original idea behind Bexar Facts, which was really to get community input and to show the real numbers. But, originally, Lisa and I talked about this years and years ago, and Spriester and I, our goal was to have community meetings and have you come in and have a big community dialogue. And then we just got to Spriester's point about everything just flipped upside down. All of the community coffees to discuss the polling results just went out the window. And, we were in lockdown. So, hopefully into the future, we're able to deal with issues like homelessness, right? In every one of the polls, homelessness. Spriester did a huge deep dive on homelessness in San Antonio. That was one of the most watched 30-minute programs on KSAT. We've got to face these issues, and they're uncomfortable for our policymakers to necessarily have to deal with. And we're putting it in your face. And we're going to say, these are the issues that people care about the most. And we're going to have community-wide discussions on them. Be engaged. Let's start finding what the solutions are. And I think that in the end, that was the genesis of why we're all here and why we formed, Bexar Facts to begin with.
Yeah, it's also helpful for me as a journalist to see, okay, homelessness does matter to people in Bexar County and San Antonio. I remember, I did the special, about a year ago, but then 10 years before that, 15 years before that, I did another special, which was kind of the first thing I did. And my news director said, I don't think people care about homelessness. You know, I wish we had Bexar Facts back then so I could say, oh, yeah, well, look at this poll. So, I mean, that's just an added bonus to what we're doing, is it shows that people do care about this issue. There are various reasons behind why they care, but the fact that they do care is something that I think can be a barometer for a lot of the things that are people that are in, you know, leadership positions, what they decide to do and what they decide to do next.
Yeah, when we first started this, Christian always talked about, you know, we were not sure if this is something the community would embrace. But hey, let's try it and see what happens. And I know Iris, initially when we started, I mean, you received tons of emails and calls about, hey, where can I find methodology? Where, what about this? What about that? What have you found to be the most valuable about the poll?
Well, the methodology page has been very helpful to respond. But yeah, I mean, people are, you know, rightfully skeptical, and they want to know, you know, how we went about taking this poll and all of that. And I think the way that y'all have kind of broken that down on the website, incredibly helpful for me, because I can say, hey, check this out here. It's backed by scientific research. You know, Dave has a ton of experience explaining that to people as well. And so he's been great in explaining it to me. But yeah, I mean, and I think to Steve's point, the most valuable piece of this has been to say, well, maybe we didn't realize something was as important to people, you know, throughout this. And it's been just a gold mine of story ideas and inspiration for us to send various reporters out to report on.
And I'll, you know, to sort of build on what Iris is saying, I really think that the value of doing careful opinion research like this is that it gives a voice to members of the community that don't otherwise have the time or the opportunity to make themselves heard. You know, often when we talk to local elected officials, their perception of what the public thinks is formed by the people who show up at a city council meeting to offer testimony, or who send them emails or call them, or who come to community events where they may be present. And the truth of the matter is, in many communities, it's the same group of 300 or 400 people that are constantly the ones who are in communication with their elected officials. Whereas most members of a large metropolitan area like San Antonio, they're busy with their jobs, with their kids, trying to make ends meet, and thinking about the bigger issues facing the public and what elected officials or journalists may be saying or doing about them is just not something they really have the time to weigh in on. And the virtue of a survey like this is it reaches out and it finds those people and it asks them what they think and provides them an opportunity to give some input that they might not otherwise have. And sometimes that lines up with what, you know, city council members are hearing at a council meeting, but sometimes those opinions are very different. And having this kind of data can be a useful check and balance as part of that process.
I love that, Dave. I love it's your voice. It gives people a voice. Yeah.
One thing that comes to mind is that it's interesting to see what it reinforces of what people think, but also what people don't think. One thing that comes to mind is the mayor's popularity, even after the winter storm, how there, you know, I think there might have been an assumption of like the leadership, you know, is it the mayor's fault? Is it, you know, whose fault is it? And the mayor, people did not see the mayor as responsible. And it was right before the election. And, you know, that could have been a story, that could have been a turning point. And that's just not what people thought. And so, you know, just kind of like the interesting things of what didn't happen because our numbers were there or reflective of what people thought. And it was consumed by the media and the community. So it's just interesting to see how, you know, the impact of this, and even though it's only been around for a short amount of time, how it's really had an immediate impact.
It really has. And that's the thing, you know, I think all of us that are on this podcast have had somebody before the poll was going to be released begging them to give them the So if you want to know what the impact is, that's it right there. I mean, and some of these people are the same ones that'll publicly question the methodology or question that. And I just like to say, you know, we're transparent. I mean, there's nothing in the questions. There's nothing in the methodology. There's nothing that we are hiding among anything. And beyond that, our polls are pretty darn accurate. And they've proven to be pretty darn accurate over the time. And it's great when I can go to Paula Gold-Williams. I interviewed her a couple of weeks ago and say, the approval rating for CPS Energy has dropped a lot in the Bexar Facts poll from before the winter storm until after. And that's a talking point for her to realize. And she embraced the fact that their popularity is taking a hit. I mean, she did not question the poll at all. So it's just something that, we can, just the fact that we now have a benchmark too, to look at some of these entities and some of these people like the mayor, like the governor, like the county judge, we have a benchmark that we can kind of see where their approval ratings are.
Yeah, we've talked about, we mentioned the pandemic and all the wins that we've gained. In a pandemic, we were still able to establish this organization. But I also want to talk about, how hard it is to establish a nonprofit in itself, but let alone during this time. I think that Christian and Lisa, my colleagues, what's been the most challenging, and what have you learned from this process?
Well, I'll start, Lisa. I think, one of the things in getting any organization started is credibility. And I think that, coming from a political background, coming from working on a lot of elections, people are going to look at me and, what's his agenda? Who's he really working for? I'm sure everybody on this podcast has heard that, and so I think that for me to be able to step back and make sure that the organization itself comes with credibility. To that end, the Spriester, Iris, Dave, you guys add so much credibility to what we're doing in terms of removing, anybody's agenda out, right? So no single person could even get their agenda through if they wanted to. And then, DeMonte, I think it takes time to establish credibility. And I think that the accuracy of the polls has given us, the credibility that we need. We set out a 5-year plan early on where we wanted to be the most trusted source in San Antonio for data. And I think that that's established. I think that people trust us. They know our numbers are going to be accurate. They might make the argument that there's a hidden agenda, but we're as transparent and clear as you can be. We release everything. So, DeMonte, the short answer to that is credibility and establishing it to the point where people would buy in and want to see us be successful and use our numbers. Steve, you brought up Paula Gold-Williams. I'd walk into CPS Energy headquarters and the Bexar Facts poll would be up on the wall. Now back then the numbers were better and the winter storm hadn't occurred, so it was easier. But to Paula's credit, she put it out even when they were taking their licks. And when you see different organizations, nonprofits that would never be able to afford to be able to see the impact that they're having in our community and be able to use our data, it is really rewarding to see that. And we've got to, we're still a baby organization. But one thing we do have is the firepower to make it the most trusted source of data in the county. And I think we're getting there certainly sooner than 5 years.
I think my response would be a little bit more on the technical side and in terms of establishing what we had anticipated doing. Christian referenced having events. I mean, we thought that the model for what we were going to do was going to be based on revenue for events. And we, have had to shift that. We had to shift it very quickly and figure out, what then if we're not going to be doing events and that's not the way we're going to bring in revenue. We have to pivot. Now we're going to establish ourselves as a 501c3 and hopefully, pursue opportunities with an academic institution and being able to bring in more philanthropic dollars. And so I think from an administrative, coming from working for nonprofits and volunteer-driven organizations, like there's been a learning curve for all of us in how we establish ourselves. And more importantly, not just establish ourselves, but then to figure out how to pivot to grow and how to continue as an organization.
Gotcha. And I'm Iris, I remember you guys made that pivot from a for-profit to a nonprofit as well. And I'm sure you guys went through some of those growing pains. Do you feel like that's similar to what you guys had to go through?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully we didn't have to do it during a pandemic. But it was hard. It was hard to kind of shift just our general way of thinking. Like, we have a membership program now. It's very different from how we used to operate. And thankfully now we have a great business team that does all that stuff. So the reporters don't have to.
Okay, great. So let's switch gears a little bit. So Dave, I'm going to kick this to you. Obviously, we look to you to filter out all the crap we send to you and say, hey guys, this is the right. So Dave, in your many years of conducting scientific surveys, what's something people tend to misunderstand about polling?
Oh, there are many things people misunderstand about polling. But I would say the biggest one, and the one that pollsters are most often fighting, is the perception that polling is supposed to be a crystal ball. That you take a poll, you look at it, and it tells you what's going to happen in the future. And this is particularly true when we're talking about election results. And we always try to remind people that no, any poll is just a snapshot of a moment in time. It's what people think during those 3 or 4 days when the poll was in the field. And of course, what they think can change between the time of the poll and election day. It's why we run political campaigns. If no one was going to change their minds in the last 4 weeks, we wouldn't spend millions of dollars on TV ads and mailers and all of those kinds of things. As you have pointed out, I think we've over the course of the year and a half we've been doing this, we've had a couple of elections in San Antonio, and the polls that we've done right before the election have been pretty closely in line with what those election results have been. But that's not always the case. Sometimes they do change, and so people have to be aware of that limitation of polling. I think the second thing is sometimes people are surprised when they look at poll results and they see things that seem to be contradictory or in conflict. In our most recent poll, for example, we saw that a solid majority of local residents had a positive view of the San Antonio Police Officers Association, and yet we also had a majority who said they thought that the POA was an obstacle to reform. The fact of the matter is people are complicated. They often hold views that are mutually contradictory in their head at the same time. It's sort of what gets us through our day, is to sort of accept some of these internal contradictions. And it isn't until you force people to confront some of the difficult trade-offs in their beliefs that they really think through how to resolve some of these conflicts. And that's why in the poll, a lot of times we have questions that present people with two opposing views, both of which may be plausible or reasonable, and ask them which one they agree with more. So I think, understanding that what the polls reflect is what people think, and what people think isn't always going to be logical or consistent, but it reflects reality. That's another thing that people often don't understand.
And I think also there's been a shift in polling and how to find and target those groups that you need. I sent you an article about this interesting phenomenon about like this, these kind of smaller radical groups and how they're harder to identify and to poll and to get input from. And then what impact does that make? So I just think that polling, the science behind it, it is a science. It's evolving. It's changing. So I think that it makes what you do that much more important and challenging.
It's true. I mean, it's getting harder all the time. People are making it harder and harder to find them and talk to them. I've been doing this for about 25 years, and relative to a lot of other pollsters, I'm relatively new at it. But even in just the time I've been doing it, when we started in the late 90s, everyone we talked to was on a landline phone, and we could call landline phones and get a sample of people. And after a while, people stopped answering their landline phones because they got answering machines and voicemail. And so we had to make more calls to get to our sample. And then people stopped using landline phones at all and switched to mobile phones. And originally they paid for them by the minute, and they didn't want to spend those minutes talking to a pollster. And so I started to get through to them then. Now people don't even answer their mobile phones, and we've had to switch to emails and texts to reach people. And so there's this constant process of adaptation. As the way the public communicates changes, pollsters have to be constantly refining their methods to make sure we're not developing blind spots, to make sure that there aren't segments of the community that our methods of outreach are missing. And that's why with Bexar Facts, what we've tried to do is use as many different methods as possible to ensure that all elements of the community are included. We do the polling in English and in Spanish. We do it on landline phones and wireless phones. We send people emails. We send people text messages. Everything we can do to invite as broad and representative a sample of the greater San Antonio area to participate, is what we want to do.
And I think that's important, Dave. I've spoken to a few people who thought we did a SurveyMonkey survey and send it out. So I think you being able to explain all the different facets and all the different levels of that we implement just to build one poll, I think that's critical and important information for people to know. But Iris and Steve, I'm interested, you guys do this on a daily basis. You're digging into data, you're trying to find resources to write your stories. And I mean, I'm sure you've seen a gamut of issues across the board. What has been the most revealing aspect about the data that we have gathered? What has stood out most to you from the work that we've done?
One of the most interesting, I think, kind of several data points for me was just seeing the uptick of public support for institutions and elected officials in the early stages of the pandemic, and then watching it kind of drop to normal levels too. I just wonder what that says about people, like if they gained more awareness about how local government impacts their day-to-day lives during the pandemic. And I wonder if that will carry through post-pandemic, and maybe we'll see more engaged people, that do pay attention to their utility board meetings, as boring as they are, and participate in local elections. I think that's another piece of this too, is that, the more people that vote, the more voices are heard, and so I hope that a side effect of all of this is increased voter turnout.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think I totally echo that, Iris, but I also think, just the meat that is in every poll that we do, and I mean just the different issues. You can see it on our website where they plan out, okay, this day we're going to talk about homelessness. This day we're going to talk about crime and safety. This day we're going to talk about approval ratings. This day we're going to talk about CPS energy and SAWs and, all the different things. Just the breadth and width of what we have in every single poll to disseminate and go through and put out to the public is something that I don't think I anticipated before this started. I thought maybe, it's a poll, we'll cover the poll. Well, no, it's so much more than that. And I think that's what is valuable to not only myself as a journalist, but also to our digital journalists, to our, people that are at City Hall, people that are at the courthouse. All of these different things are so valuable. And it's a unique tool for KSAT. It's a unique tool for the San Antonio Report because it's got our name on it. So if we're not saying the other stations can't use it or the other publications can't use it, but you got to give us credit. And so that's something that's the exclusive element, I think, is also something that is very valuable for us. And I do look forward to the time when we can have a substantive conversation live in one room, whether it's over coffee, whether it's over beers, whether it's over lunch, and we can talk about homelessness and education and, CPS energy and the power grid or whatever, or just to reveal the poll itself, for the first time in one place. So I really think there's still a value to that. And I know that's what we talked about off the top about that's something we want to do. And so I'm also excited about that part that we can hopefully grow and nurture as we move forward.
That's something that we will do. Things are opening up, things are getting safer. So you're starting to see, more of those things happening. So we definitely want to commit to that. We're definitely committed to that. And I think you pushed me to my next question, which you kind of led me there is, how has the polls changed your perspective on how you cover local news? Like has before the poll and now after the poll is here, has it changed the way you cover it and the way you report on it?
Well, I don't know, but it's drastically, changed my perspective on how to cover local news. But it has very much reinforced for me, I mean, the idea that I and all journalists have a responsibility to inform the public. And we saw like the police union and Fix SAPD, they saw a gap in, that I think it was 29% of undecided voters.
Right.
I saw an opportunity like, oh, people don't really understand. They're still undecided. There's people still have questions about this. And so I wrote 2 different explainers about the impacts of Prop B, one before our debate, with which we all hosted, and one after, because in that one dove even deeper because I was still getting emails from readers being, well, I don't quite understand this. So the poll itself kind of inspired that, and then that follow up and feedback kind of was like, okay, this is we have a responsibility here to let folks know what this actually means. And I think empowering people with that information, it's something that we take seriously, and Bexar Facts helps us do that.
Thank you.
And I think it hasn't really changed the way we cover necessarily, but I think it's certainly changed the agenda, and maybe instead of our city leaders and county leaders maybe telling us what they think is important, we actually have a tool to tell them what the average San Antonian thinks is important, and I think that's invaluable. And it's the thing I love more than anything else is I think this Bexar Facts thing that we've started on endeavor is resonating. I mean, when we did the Prop B debate, Iris and I and Bexar Facts, we had more than 30,000 people just watching it on Facebook Live. That's just that number. That doesn't include the live stream numbers of the people who watched it after the event. I mean, those are huge numbers for somebody. And you always wonder, if what you're doing, people are engaged in it. And I think that's a solid proof that people are paying attention.
It's so interesting that this issue, as understood or misunderstood as it was, it really is what drove people to the polls in this May election, right? And there was so much coverage on it, and we polled it generically, not generically like in a poor way, but we did an initial kind of soft launch of what people thought about it in what we thought was kind of normal language, not legal language. And then we polled it again with the legal language, and the results were different. And it just in that light of it being a difficult issue, being difficult to understand, and then the complications of what how the language played out in the election, which it all reinforces this notion of making it difficult to drive people to the vote and understand what they're voting on, right? Which we all are for. We're all for increasing the number of people engaged and involved in voting, and what a difficult issue that was, and ultimately that's what drove that May election. I just want to note that it was
just the ballot language itself, like you said, was just so. I mean, I said during the debate, I read verbatim what's on the ballot, and I said that's as clear as mud.
Yes.
I mean, they could not written it in a more obtuse way if they tried. And so the fact that still, I totally agree with you, Lisa, that still drove so many people to the poll, despite it being difficult to understand and difficult to, fight your way through. I mean, and I think that also was a huge part of what we did with that forum debate, whatever you want to call it, is explain exactly what it does and what it doesn't do, and kind of hold both sides accountable, because there was so much misinformation that was out there about, what Prop B did and didn't do. It was good to have that venue to hold people's feet to the fire about certain things.
But I love that, our poll led to an immediate reaction, right? It led Iris to jump on it. You guys getting together, making it happen quickly to produce an event to help explain it. And I mean, our first poll, when we just tested the waters about the aquifer and pre-K, I mean, immediately people were overwhelmingly responsive and supportive of the aquifer. And it really created a shift in policy at City Hall to support financially the aquifer. And I think that was one of the things for me that was such an interesting takeaway and surprise of like just the immediacy of the impact of the poll, and how impactful what we're doing really is. And we've seen that, over time. And in each of the polls, something very unique and different was the takeaway, not to defund the police, right? Like we saw that immediately. People were not supportive of defunding the police. And that argument just was not going to work in San Antonio, as another example. So I think that, from an impact and what we're doing, I feel like it's really had a defining impact on policy in our community.
Can I also, I'm hesitant to do this because, I know him well, but I want to give a shout out to Christian because I'm surprised he still has his hair, and I see he is.
Look at it.
This whole Facts experiment that would not happen without him. I mean, it was not the way it was envisioned, and the fact that all of us, but especially Christian, stuck in there. I mean, I'm highly appreciative of the fact that we are still here, we're still standing, and that, I just think that this whole thing is stronger than ever. And I look forward to, more partnerships in the future, where people get behind this and, kind of put their money where their mouth is when it comes to how valuable this poll on issues is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Steve. I think one of our next big moves is really bringing in, very similar to the Kinder Institute in Houston, is to bring in university partners and continue to add that layer of gravitas, to get young minds engaged in public policy, engaged in campaigns, or whatever it takes to get young people to stay active in San Antonio and in Bexar County, but also to tap into young people to come up with creative ideas on things that are important to their future, and this is going to be their city, and so we've been in ongoing discussions with different university partnerships. I think that they'll, in the coming months, there'll be a partnership established, and our brand will continue to grow with the agenda of being the most reliable source of data in the county. So, but thank you for that, Steve. That was very kind.
Sure. I know you don't get compliments much, so I thought I'd...
Yeah, nobody.
It's been such a great conversation, and Christian just pushed me to that next part where, look, we've came a long way as an organization in such a short period of time. But we still, and we've talked about all the great things that we've done so far and what we're doing today. But Bexar Facts still has a lot to do and a lot of things that we want to accomplish, from being in the community, having these conversations. Lisa, if you can kind of just elaborate on kind of what Christian talked about and leading to some of the things we're doing now and how we want to move forward as an organization.
Well, as was mentioned, we are looking to partner with an academic institution, opportunities for young people to do research, to really dive into some of these policy issues like homelessness, like aquifer protection, like police reform, social injustice. Like these things have been happening in Houston for 40 years with the Kinder Institute, which is really what we are modeling ourselves after. And so we are hoping to be able to grow as an organization and to establish ourselves as the premier research organization, institution, and we want to grow that. And we mentioned earlier that we didn't know when we started this experiment whether people were going to embrace it. And so we've seen the impact, the immediate impact, the response that we've been receiving. People like what we're doing, they value what we're doing, and so now is opportunity for us to grow. We are looking for financial partners to help us in our effort to grow. As I mentioned, we are establishing ourselves as a 501c3. That is going to be significant for us, and hopefully in this kind of next phase, we'll be able to do more public events, being in the community. Really, the whole idea of this was to be community-based, to community-focused, community-centric, to be the voice of the community, to amplify the voice of the community. And so all of the things that we've been doing are really, to that end. And so we're excited about that opportunity to partner with an academic institution. We really feel like that will grow our the significance of what we're doing, and then especially having over time. I mentioned there was a good and bad year for the first poll, because where we're starting as a baseline is probably, I think that they've said the pandemic is a once in a century event.
Let's hope so.
Hopefully.
So we're, to see, how our community evolves from here. So more to come. A lot of opportunities for us to explore, and we are looking for community partners, and really appreciate your support as partners in this experiment that we have launched.
So this is our favorite, Steve, Dave, Iris, this is our favorite part of the podcast, where we get to ask our guests the magic wand question. So Dave, we'll start with you. If you had a magic wand, what would you wish for? Anything you want.
I wish for everybody to pick up their phone when a pollster calls.
That's a great one.
All right. Iris?
Sorry.
You can wait. We can edit it all out. Don't worry.
Sorry.
Well, I would wish for the ability to give Dave all the staff and funding to do a poll every single month.
I wish for that too, by the way.
Yeah. And also, I kind of, whenever we look at these polls, I kind of wish that we had another poll that includes non-active voters as well, because we all know the voting population is generally whiter, higher income, more likely to own their own home. It would be interesting to see if the general population perspective tracks with that of the voting population, and I imagine it diverges on some issues, but that would be my magic wand.
And my main man, Steve Spriester, you can close us out.
Thanks, DeMonte. I guess if I had a magic wand, I would want to give people the ability to realize that everything's not black and white. But there's a lot of gray in there. And I think our poll shows that. It is possible to support the police, but also want reform. Those people can't hold those two things in their mind at the same time. And that has to do with so many issues that we cover at KSAT and the San Antonio Report, or we dive into for Bexar Facts. I just wish more people could step back, step away from whatever team or side or agenda they think they have to be with, and take a deep breath and realize things are not black and white in real life, that there is a lot of gray in there. And so that's what I wish, that we all could maybe step back, take a deep breath, and have that realization.
Man, this conversation is so good. So good. Thank you all so much. This has been an incredible experience to grow this organization, not only with my colleagues, but with you guys. We would not be this far along without your help. We just wanted to say how thankful we are on behalf of our people that are here. But just thank you so much for hanging in there with us and ensuring that we're fulfilling our mission and on track for our vision. So thank you all.
And I'm thankful for the Bexar Facts team. I don't want to just give props to Christian and let it stop there. What you've done, DeMonte, and what Lisa have done in spearheading this whole thing, and just the diversity of opinions and experiences that all of you bring, I am so thankful for. And I think that's what makes Bexar Facts special.
Yeah, this has been a very unique and it's just great to watch you all work so hard on this and have it come to fruition.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for that. That means a lot to us. But onward, big announcements coming soon, and thank you all again for participating in our podcast. This was actually the result of the pandemic, right? We all had to kind of switch over to new ways of communicating with people, and we've had just superstar people on the 16 previous podcasts, dealing with everything from domestic violence to homelessness, the mayor and the county judge, and it's been a real pleasure to have you guys on our 17th episode. So onward.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
See y'all soon.
Good deal. All right, Ethan.
Cool. Good job. That was awesome, guys.
Any omissions, guys, other than the phone call?
That part where I complimented Christian, can you take that out?
No, definitely not. Ethan, send that recording to me right now.
Okay,
We're going to see if we can get it on the 6 o'clock news.
I'm having second thoughts.
So much for credibility.
That's going to be our first. That's going to be our first social media post.
Spreaker compliments Christian.
Yes.
Okay.
So, guys,
Let's get an email out.
So Iris, Steve, Dave, we're gonna package this up. We'll send you guys an email with the contents in it, some graphics. Would be so grateful if you guys could send it out to your networks. It helps us kind of expand our subscribers. I'm sure we'll pull in some subscribers that kind of move over to you guys as well. So it really would help out if you can do that for us. If you can't, no biggie, but we really could use that help. But you don't have to do anything. We'll send you everything you need.
Are you okay with us putting it on our website and things like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank y'all.
I think Colton will be interested. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
All right. Ethan,
All right.
good to go?
Oh no, where did Archer go?
Oh, he's probably
He's got to go. All right.
this is probably all the time he had.
So Ethan, I gave you a couple of things that you probably could flash in the interim, like the closeness of the election and the aquifer thing to flash in that. I mean, it doesn't have to be long, but at least we can reference them.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sound was okay?
Sound was great.
Okay, I saw Chris.
I was hearing feedback from somebody.
Well, so I there's a new thing where I can download each individual audio file, so I can just mute whoever's got feedback coming through.
Oh wow!
Yeah, StreamYard has really upped their game, so now I can control everybody's volume individually.
Good. And I noticed that. Oh, go ahead, Lisa. I'm sorry.
No. I didn't. I'm on my MacBook, and I don't know how to use it, and so I didn't know how to turn the ringer off on the. Anyway, whatever. You can get that.
It's all good. I wrote it down.
Should be an icon at the top that allows you to silence it, but we'll send you something on it. Ethan, I saw Christian's video go a little fuzzy from time to time. Is that an issue?
No, wasn't an issue on my end.
Cool. Well, I'll look forward to the clips. I'm going to dive in a little bit more on this one to pull out a lot of clips. We've been posting maybe like 2 or 3. We'd like to see more of the clips out because it's 2 weeks until we do another one. So we'd like to really squeeze more juice out of our podcast in terms of the quotes and some of the things that were talked about, especially on this one, since we had so many guests.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
Lisa, any feedback?
No, I just feel like we need to make sure that we get some of the data, from the polls that we referenced.
Well, you gave them the charts that you wanted, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So I'll flash those up. Did you want to do kind of like an outro thing real quick?
Yeah, we can do it. Well, let me.
Do you want to write something down and then we'll just like schedule another?
Yeah, we'll do it because it's going to be audio. It's basically an outro, Lisa. We don't right now. Our podcast just cuts off. It doesn't say for more information. Follow us on our social media platform. Subscribe if you want to hear more episodes. Subscribe to the Bexar Facts podcast. Follow us on social media, that type of thing. We don't have that, and so I'm going to write a script out and record that.
Okay. Good.
Cool.
Sounds good. Well, good job. That was awesome, guys. Very fun to listen to.
Thank you, man.
So on that one, is there any benefit in like having the websites where they have like the Rivard Report has like all of the Bexar Facts articles and KSAT has their Bexar Facts website and with all of the Bexar Facts? Is there any value to including that?
In the outro?
Well, yeah, like I'd like as a last clip or something saying, I mean, I think it's impressive to see all of the articles that they have.
Oh, you mean like to flash up onto the screen?
Well, like at the end, like in a,
the backlinks. I think there's that backlinks. Is that what she's referring to? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sure thing, guys.
Bye.